Here we go. If you're catching us on the replay, this is just a simple 20-second lead-in to let some ads play. Let the footage start rolling for those catching us live. But if it's 7 p.m. here in, well, at least my central time zone, in a Thursday night, that means it's time for the CarrGuy and SixFan show. If it's the central time zone for our guest, then he's reaching us from the future, about half a day ahead of us. So, but I am Grant Tommy. I am straight SixFan. That makes me SixFan of this operation, the CarrGuy and SixFan show. And that means this gentleman over here.
I'm Jason, and I am OCG, or CarrGuy, old CarrGuy of the CarrGuy and SixFan show. And thank you guys for joining us on this Thursday evening. And right out of the gate, Turlo's Garage giving us $4.99 for a gallon of gas for the radio flyer. Thank you so much for that donation. That's going over to Grant to help him with that restoration project. And we also want to make sure we welcome some of the guests that are in the chat already. And that is Bryce DeCastro. We've also got Will's Wheels, Turlo's Garage is in there, Gary Mathis. Thank you guys for joining in. Small crowd tonight. Hopefully people will start to roll in. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on your way in, and don't forget to share this live stream.
So with that, we'll hand it over to our guest. Like I mentioned, he is from a hemisphere away, about 16 hours in the future. But we'll turn it over to you, Tim. Tell us who you are, what your channel's about, then yeah, just take it from there.
How you doing, everyone? My name's Tim. On social media, I call myself Second Stage. And basically, I make content about rusty Corollas. That's cars that I enjoy to drive and modify. And I got myself an A86 and also a K70 panel van, like a two-door little van thing. And most of my content sort of revolves around modifying them for track car duties. So I like to do a fair amount of hill climb racing, and we're also building a car as a drift car. So yeah, that's me. My name's Tim. I live in a little town called Adelaide down in Australia.
Well, Tim, thanks so much for joining us for the CarrGuy and SixFan show. I know that you come to us compliments of 802 Garage here in the U.S. I say here, I'm not in the U.S. You guys know that. He gave us your name, and you reached out and said you'd be more than honored to be a part of the show. So thanks for joining us on Friday morning for you. And we're going to jump right in with some questions and try and learn a little bit about Second Stage, a little bit about who Tim is. Tell us, Tim, what got you into cars? What got you into the Corollas that you so aspire to work on and fix up?
Cars, what got me into cars and what got me into Corollas is kind of two different stories. So we'll brush over both. I guess it all started with my dad sailing boats, which might sound a bit weird. And I used to have to go down to the beach. And I don't know if you've ever watched a sailing race from the beach. It is the most boring thing you could expect a 10-year-old to do. So that was me every weekend down at the beach watching boats bob around. And then my eldest cousin, he's quite a fair bit older than me. He's like, "Come on, Timmy, jump in my Valiant," which is like a Chrysler. Jump in my Chrysler, and we're going to go watch some drag racing. And I'm like, okay. So we got in this old Valiant with a straight six in it, the old 265 Hemi motor. And we cruised out to the local drag strip. And I think I was like 13, and my mind was blown just watching these drag cars just making so much noise and traveling so quick, and it was happening right in front of me. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. And I was basically hooked after that. And then I watched a movie called Gone in 60 Seconds. I probably would have been 15, 16 when that came out, and instantly fell in love with Eleanor, the 65 Shelby Mustang, and I wanted a Mustang. It's like, that's it, I'm getting a Mustang. That's the coolest thing ever. And the closest thing that I could sort of afford and was available here in Australia, because we didn't really get Mustangs down here, was a Valiant Charger, which is a two-door coupe, and it's got like the same swoop back with a little bit of a kick. It's not a Mustang, but if you squint, it's very similar to the Eleanor from Gone in 60. And I fell in love with Valiants. Obviously, that first ride to the drag strip with my cousins, and then as an apprentice, I saved up all my money and I bought a Valiant Charger. And I wasted all my money on that for the next 5 years. But in that time, I wasn't driving it. It was a restoration project, or like a project. And in that time, I actually had myself a little Mazda 626. Now, here in Adelaide, we live in a fairly cool place where the city's actually quite a long city that's hemmed in with the ocean. And then the other side of the city, it's a complete set of hills. And the driving roads that we have through those hills they're actually epic driving roads. They're really, really fun. And I had this little Mazda 626, and before we sort of knew it, car guys would go up to the lookout at the top on a Friday night, and we started doing that and getting up there around twisty roads. And I realized I don't actually care about going fast in a straight line. I don't care about drag racing. I like twisty roads. And so the Valiant Charger, the old 1971 Chrysler with torsion bar front end and leaf spring rear, and the thing was heavy. It's like, this thing's probably not going to carve up a mountain road very nicely. So I sold it, and I started looking for other project. I wanted another project. I like having a project on the go. This time focused more around a car that likes to go around corners. And my mate had an A86 that needed a new engine, but it was already set up for a 4AG ZE, which is a little 1.6 litre supercharged engine that Toyota brought out in the Toyota MR2. And I wanted the supercharger because, you know, I still love the muscle cars. I still love the big blowers out of bonnets and V8s and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, hey, if I can go around a corner quickly, but also have a supercharger, I thought that's a cool thing. So I ended up with a A86, and that was probably 15 years ago now, I think. So yeah, that was the first one. And there's something special about an A86. Once you get into them, and once you start driving them, and once you start going around the corners, that's it. You're ruined for the rest of your life, because every other car I drive, I'd rather be driving my A86. So I guess that's a short, compact story, but yeah, that's kind of how it all began.
Well, Tim, as you were explaining that, two memories came straight to my mind from our 2012 trip to Australia. As you were talking about that, one was you talked about going to sailboat races, and I instantly remembered this like Sonic Blue, like early '90s Ford Falcon pulling a boat, and that for me it was like the Falcon was king down there. I mean, the Utes and stuff. Like, you know, I'm so accustomed to in the States. Boats always being pulled by a truck, but, you know, cars, sedans are pulling, you know, probably something like a 92 Falcon or something. And then you talked about the hills in Adelaide, and I don't remember what lookout we were going to, but I think the first time I ever saw a drift trike in my life, there was someone using a drift trike, and it was very primitive in 2012. It looked more like a little Tykes big wheel that I'm like, holy shit, this guy's gonna like whipping down hills and things. And then
So good.
Yeah. So anyway, it's definitely the car culture in Australia. Obviously, it's when you're a hemisphere away, like things are just manufactured different. Things just look different, different tastes and stuff like that. You talked about your love for muscle cars, and you even talked about your Valiant that was one of your first cars there. What's your favorite? What is your favorite muscle car era car from Australia? Because there's just different lines and different cues and body lines that we don't have here in the States, and there's some pretty cool ones down there. So what's your favorite muscle car era car?
I guess like all the stuff from the 70s is really awesome. So that's going to be like your HQ Falcons, your XY Falcons, and then your VH Charger or like Valiants. That's sort of like early stuff. But down here, like you're either a Holden fan or you're a Ford fan. And those guys are like button heads about who's better the whole time. I don't care about any of them. I like the Chryslers. So you sort of had this like little offset of the Chrysler guys on the side. It was just like a different genre. And like I kind of get that feeling that's fairly similar in the States. You got your Chevy, you got your Ford, and then the Mopar guys are over here doing crazy weird stuff. I guess it was kind of similar here. So, you know, the Chargers weren't as popular. We have a race here in Bathurst. You know, they never won Bathurst. They never did real well in our racing series because for whatever reason they chose to stick with the 4.3 litre or the 265, the Hemi 265 straight six. They never had a big V8 in there. And I think for Australians back then, it had to be big V8, big Chevy V8, you know, big Ford V8. That's what it was all about. And so, I don't know, I kind of like that at the same time. I kind of like that it, you know, you weren't just another Holden fan or another Ford fan, that you were playing with something a little bit more obscure. But yeah, like that 70s era of muscle cars for Australia, there's some really cool cars. And like if you look around, some of the modifications and some of the engines that Australians put in those old things, like they're just crap old 70s cars, and these dudes are putting huge, big, like blown V8s that like the top of the blower's level with the roof. It just gets crazy down here sometimes. But yeah, I think that's always fun. And being a car guy, you know, I don't like, I love muscle car stuff, and I still like a real cool muscle car cruiser perhaps, but you know, there's only so many projects and so many cars that you can own, and I found myself enjoying the fun little nimble Corollas much more. So yeah, the muscle car scene's pretty big down here.
Well, and Tim, you seem to fit right in with what we kind of, or I always say we because it's kind of what we talk about, but Grant has always kind of coined that phrase, offbeat hot rodding. You've gone and you've taken something different that just nobody else is doing.
Sure.
And you've kind of made it into something. If you haven't been following what I've been doing lately, is I purchased myself a Yugo. From what I understand, Yugos were never sold in Australia.
I have no idea what a Yugo is.
Yeah, so it was just a Fiat offshoot that was branded in the country of Yugoslavia of the time. Of course, it doesn't exist today, but anyways, they were imported into Canada and the US, and I picked one up. It's got an anemic 1.1. I'm swapping it out with a 1NZ Toyota engine.
Nice.
So what's one thing that you would tell somebody like me who's looking to do an engine swap of, say, a small Toyota engine or any engine to one car? What's one thing as a fabricator you would say to give advice to moving forward to help with this project?
So you're putting your Toyota motor into the Yugo.
Yep.
What would I say about that?
Besides that, I'm crazy, but
I guess one thing that's nice is be smart about the parts that you're going to choose in the conversion. So if you're going to have to make custom engine mounts, buy the Toyota rubber and then make custom off the back of the rubber. So if you ever need to do an engine mount, you're not having to try and find something obscure or having to try and remake something when the engine mount wears out. You just go down to the parts store and buy a Toyota engine mount. So I guess that's one thing for what you're doing. Like if it's not a track orientated car, try and use as many easy to get parts as possible. And then you do the hard fabrication part once, and then that's it. You can just, you know, everything else becomes a consumable. Check all your clearances. So that's going to be one thing, trying to get it to fit and then be in the right spot when you make your engine mounts. You got to make sure everything clears and, you know, put the exhaust system on, make sure you can get to the oil filter, you know, make sure you can take the air filter off or get to the spark plugs. Because, you know, a year down the road when you start driving the thing, all of a sudden you need to do it a service and you can't get to the oil filter unless you pull the motor out. It all of a sudden doesn't become very enjoyable.
Sorry about that. I was managing the chat, just trying to keep touch there. But no, yeah, behind you actually is kind of a look inside of the drift van, if I'm not mistaken. And I was watching.
Yeah, I checked a couple of photos up there.
One of your earlier videos, kind of putting together a 4-link, and I know for some people that I've never built one, but for some people that seems overwhelming. It seems like daunting, but from what I've understood, there was a forum years ago, the Ranger Station, that had a good tech article, like how to set in. A friend of mine was building an off-road rig, and same thing. He was kind of, and I was like, no. I said, I've read through this once, and this is like 4-links for dummies. Like, I think I could do it, but I guess what my ultimate question is like, it really isn't as hard as it appears, or is it?
So yeah, I did an equal link 4-link rear in that van, and there's kind of a couple of reasons why I went down that road. In my AE86, it's an unequal 4-link, so the top arm's quite a fair bit shorter to the bottom arm. And I would like to put an equal length 4-link in my 86. If I do that, it pushes me out of the category that I race in at hill climb. So I'm not allowed to. So if you look at my two cars next to each other, the A86, I've got quite a few rules that I need to abide by for the class that I race in, which we call improved production. So there's lots of things I'm not allowed to do. So my drift van is all the things I'm not allowed to do to my 86. And I've just gone, to be honest, I've probably got a little bit carried away with it. So for me, I'm like, nah, I'm doing the most mental equal length, 4-link rear in the back of my van because I wanted to do it and I can't do it in my 86. So I guess I had a fair bit of knowledge from A86 and what an equal length, 4-link looks like and all the benefits of that. I spent a reasonable amount of time online first trying to get good info. Funny enough, a lot of the mini truck guys have good info because they do what I do, where I've notched the chassis rail and make a whole system from scratch. But basically what I've aimed for is I set the ride height of the vehicle, and then I've aimed to have both of my arms that are equal length parallel when the car's at its ride height. So that's kind of the info that I sort of came up with. And then it was just a matter of fabricating all that and making that work. So that car from factory has leaf spring rear, and I wasn't interested in drifting with leaf springs. So I'm like, okay, well, what can I do? I've always wanted to do a custom 4-link. So it was basically a learning experience for me. That's the first one that I'd done. And yeah, just scouring the internet and talking to people that are smarter than me just about what's important. And then I found a few things where you can drop the top arm and change the roll center from front and back. So I made the top bracket adjustable. So if we do go drag racing and we've got traction issues, we might be able to change that arm and get it off the line a bit better. It might never be changed at all. It might just stay there for the rest of its life. But yeah, so I guess I'm doing the same way as everyone else. You just punch online and watch as many YouTube videos as you can find and chat to some mates and then just jump in and have a crack and see what happens.
So as far as fabrication goes, is this something that you're self-taught? Did you go to school for it? Like, are you learning as you go? Like what's the thought behind, creating all these own fabricating pieces for the 4-link yourself? Is it something that's self-taught or did you go to school for it?
It's probably like a bit of all of that. So I'm actually a fitter and turner by trade. So I work in factories, keeping big machinery up and running. But I was lucky enough when I was an apprentice, I had quite a few different trades around me who were happy to teach me. So I'd spend a lot of time down with the Boilermakers, a lot of time with the sheet metal guys, wanting to learn how to weld, wanting to learn how to make stuff. And, I'd make frames and bits and pieces. So it was part of my trade. And I was lucky enough that I was in an environment where I was able to sort of swindle my way into some other trades and sort of learn as much as I can off of them. Which led me later on, if ever there was a big fabrication job at whatever job I was at, I'd sort of put my hand up and go, yeah, I can do that, and sort of push myself as I went into different jobs. And I enjoyed it, but I really like to make stuff, but I don't think I could be a Boilermaker full time. A lot of work they do is big, heavy, dirty, and every Boilermaker I've met swears a lot. So it sounds like a stressful job to me. So I dabble. I do a little bit when I need to, and then I go back to fitting and bolt things together and stuff. So I guess a lot of that was learnt through my trade, but then I actually started a full-time fabrication business, which is where Second Stage started, and actually where a lot of my social media came from. Was I was trying to promote myself as a fabrication workshop. And then I started doing roll cages, and the roll cages, I would say, was a little bit more self-taught in a way that I watched a lot of other fabricators, looked at different methods, and I just started doing cages. And so that's probably why the drift van has such an elaborate cage in it. Because like, well, this is my car. I'm not paying for my time. I only need the metal. Let's go all out on this one. So as a learning experience for me, basically. So that's where the roll cage from the van sort of started. And I read the rule book of what we got pretty strict rules down here with our motorsport from FIA, what we call Australian Motorsport. And I read the rule book and I stuck to it, and I built what would be a legal cage, basically for a rally car. Really, it's pretty extreme. There's not too many more bars you'd put in that car. So yeah, I knew how to weld, I knew how to cut things, and I kind of taught myself off watching others how to use. I bought a proper bender, how to use a bender, and how to measure and do all the sort of tricky bends that you need to in a roll cage. And like, really, how awesome is the internet? Like, if this was 20 years ago, I would have been getting books out of a library trying to learn this, or you have to get physically next to somebody that will show you how to do it. And now you can just jump on and watch pros do it on YouTube for free and learn from them, really.
Can you imagine how greasy and dirty those books would be at the library?
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Tim, as you talk about the fabricating side of things, and you're following rule books for races, every car culture is different, or in each of our different countries, or the how to modify a car. And if I'm not mistaken, in Australia, you got to have a modified car engineered or something like that. So just as a street driver, obviously if you're doing the race stuff, so. Talk a little bit about that, how your business sort of navigates that part of the car culture. Is most of your business, is it mostly race oriented, or where do you see most of your business coming from on the fabrication side?
So, I mean, I did a lot of exhaust systems. So here you kind of just had to, your exhaust system's got to be 90 decibels at 3,500 RPM. That's what's classed as legal. So if someone comes in and says, hey, I need a new exhaust system for my car, I sort of say to them, hey, do you want it street legal? What do you want? If they want their car stupidly loud, I'll do it. It's their problem. It doesn't come back to me. So, there's that bit there. As a fabricator, it's like I'm there to do what the customer wants in their car, And so if they want to do something to their car that the police probably aren't too interested in, but they really, really want to do it and they need me to do it, it's just like I sort of explain to them, it's like, hey, look, this, you're not allowed to drive this on the road. So as far as I'm concerned, you're taking this to the racetrack and we get it done. But yeah, the rules down here are pretty strict with what you're allowed to do on a car here in Australia and then drive it on the road and not be harassed by the police is very, very strict, which is kind of why I'm building flat out drift car. It's just like you stick it on a trailer, take it out to the drag strip, the racetrack, go nuts for a day drifting, and then you put it back in your shed and no one's harassed you, whereas you have a really nice street. Like I've seen so many people that have spent thousands of dollars on really clean, nice cars that are modified very well, and the police just harass them because it's easy.
Easy money for them, I suppose.
Yep.
So, guys, we do have a few people jumping in here from other live streams that I've seen popping in Shopcat Industries. I see AK Strem has jumped into the chat. Thanks for jumping in, Alex. And don't forget, Strem's here. Don't forget, guys, after the CarrGuy and SixFan show, Junker Clunkers is doing the after show. So feel free to head over to his live stream and bombard him with some views over there as well.
Yes.
So, Tim, one of the things that I always find very interesting about watching Australian-oriented YouTube channels, it took me a while to learn to say that without screwing it up, is simply what you had talked about, the noise level of cars, the safety, the different inspections you got to go through. Like, modifying a car in Australia really is no joke. You've got to follow the rules, and you've got to adhere to what it is they'll allow you to do. You just can't. You can't even lower a car, and make it look cool without going through the hoops. Where does that fall in your line of work? You had mentioned that as long as I tell the customer, does that take you off the hook, or like where does that fall with you as far as like liabilities?
I mean, like, I'm not liable at all. It's their vehicle. Once it leaves my shop, it's their property, and they've asked me to do something to it. So it's just like, yeah, that's not really a problem for me. But what a lot of guys will do down here, and I've worked with a few guys that like the stance cars. So they put big camber on vehicles and run them stupidly low. Those guys are the most dedicated car enthusiasts that I know, because they have a complete set of standard suspension in their shed They'll go out cruising Friday night. The police pull them over. They put a yellow sticker on the windscreen that defects the car, which means you have to go through a really rigorous test. They will go home that night and replace all their suspension, book in Monday morning, get the car cleared off defect, and then they spend all week after work putting the suspension back in, and they're back cruising Friday night. They're like, hats off to those boys. They are dedicated to that stance life. It's crazy. But yeah, like really a lot of people will just sort of, you can lower the car, but you can't have it railed. You know what I mean? The rules are no point of your vehicle is allowed to be 100 mil lower, like 100 mil to the ground. So your exhaust has to be 100 mil off the ground. That's the rules, which is like a stock car. That's not lowered at all. So really, you modify your vehicle. You don't rail it. You just drop it nicely. You don't have a lot of poke on the wheels. You keep them within the guards, and then you spice the motor up a little bit. And if you don't drive around like an idiot at the bad spots where all the cops hang out, most of the time you get away with it. And if the cops don't pin you, here in Adelaide at least, we don't do yearly inspections. So if the cops aren't harassing you and you're not being an idiot, then you kind of get away with it. That's sort of how we do it down here, really. But yeah, as soon as a cop puts a yellow sticker on the car, it's a massive nightmare. But yeah, not very enjoyable.
Well, Jason mentioned the Australian-focused automotive YouTube channels. I don't know if I got that out as well as he did, but I'm sure I don't mean this as a, you don't have to tell me what you feel about these guys one way or the other, but it's just one of those big channels that even here we know in the States, obviously Mighty Car Mods is the big one down there. So what is sort of what are your aspirations here on YouTube, or when you think about the big guys in your niche? How do you compare yourself to maybe your style? Or what are your hopes, dreams, goals? How do you see your YouTube career ultimately going?
It's funny, like my hopes and dreams have sort of gone backwards in a way that I started a physical business, a fabrication shop. And the reason I started making a lot more content, especially on TikTok, was to generate marketing and interest in what I was doing to bring in customers. That's why I started this. I've always enjoyed making videos about whatever. So to make videos about stuff that I love and to make videos about promoting a business that I was running is why I was doing it. And I ran that business for about 3 years, nearly 4, I think, in the end. And it got really difficult. And so a really good job popped up nearby, and I made the hard decision to, do you know what? I'm going to go back to being a fitter full time, and I'll still play with the cars on the side, but we'll basically just build my cars rather than doing customer stuff. So my aspirations were to bring customers in, and it was working, especially on TikTok. I was getting guys coming in for exhaust. I was getting guys coming in for roll cages and all that type of stuff. So that was the reason that I was doing it. I wasn't really aiming for anything more, but I found myself really enjoying it. And so now that I've gone back to work, the bit of the business that I've kept is I really like making videos, and I really like the interaction that you get with the people watching it, and the opportunities that they bring up, like this one exactly here, where I get to come and chat to a couple of cool guys on the other side of the planet. So yeah, for me at the moment, I'm just enjoying it. I'm just making videos. I'm not really aiming for them to go anywhere or be anything. I'm just enjoying it still, and basically documenting what we're doing in the workshop with my 2 cars. Saying that, some friends and I actually started a secondary business, which is just like a little bit of a side thing, where we're printing 3D parts for motorsport vehicles. And I sort of hit him up and said, hey, I've had a little bit of practice making these videos and stuff. If I help you just make some videos and help you guys out, can you print some cool parts of my car? And he actually came back and said, well, why don't you come on board completely and do it with us? So I guess the aspirations for that, which is a smaller channel that I've just started called Apex Jaeger, and the aspirations for that is to, be a platform where we can show people the parts that we're making, and then they can get in contact with us, and we can start 3D printing parts for motorsport cars. So I guess there's second stage. I'm enjoying it. Apex Jaeger, we actually want to try and do the same as what I was doing and use it as a marketing tool.
And that's what I'm convinced that the best way to make money on YouTube is to treat it as a pre-marketing wing of a company. Whether you've started that company yet or not, like, you're going to do much better using your platform and the community you've built, being able to eventually sell them some sort of a product. And so I think what you're doing makes total sense to me. It's just kind of that bouncing back and forth as to kind of which one's the more exciting bit or piece at the moment.
For sure.
And I just want to jump back there probably about a minute and a half ago where Tim said cool guys. Like that. He really knows us, Grant. We're a couple of cool guys doing our show here. Yeah. So one of the things I guess that we all have in common is that we all do YouTube. We all have an affinity for cars, no matter what they look like. Yeah, I seen the F40 sitting there on the shelf too. I was going to ask about that later.
Someone was worried that it was about to fall off, so we'll help them out and make it a bit more stable, eh?
Yeah, there you go. So you had mentioned earlier, talking. We were actually, I guess we were before we went live on camera here. We were talking about your custom sound booth that you use for doing a voiceover. And if you guys haven't seen that video on Tim's channel, make sure you go back and get it. I think it was a short that he did. It's pretty funny. But one thing that I noticed about the video that you were actually voice overing for in that short was part of a series that you did with the Adelaide rally or whatever they called it. And like that video was very well produced.
Thank you.
The editing was on spot. The voiceover sounded very professional, even though it was with a towel over your head. Like, where did you learn to do your editing and get those skills? I mean, obviously you're a hands-on guy. You're a metal fabricator by trade. You're working on cars. Like, where did this whole, pardon me for saying so, the whole nerdy side of editing videos and all that, where did that come into play?
I've always made videos, so I'm old, and back when we were at school, we used to get VHS camcorders and film stuff. And whenever I was doing a project for school, we would always try and swindle it that we could make a video. And me and my mates would go out on the weekend and just film us being idiots with a VHS camcorder on tape. And then we'd sort of splice it all together on a like on a VHS player, and then we'd play it at school as our project. It was just an excuse for us to be idiots on camera, really. So I've always, for some reason, I'm not really sure why, I've been really attracted to making video. And it's just something I enjoy. So I used to do a bit of drifting with mates here in Adelaide, and I never liked the idea. I only had one car, and the A86 with the supercharger motor in it. I didn't like the idea of smashing it up because it was quite a pretty car. So I would just go out and film, and we'd stick a GoPro on the front, and I'd chase cars, and I'd come back and I'd chop it all together and make videos. Excuse me. And I guess really that skill is completely self-taught. I've never gone to any sort of schooling for that. It's only stuff that I've watched on YouTube. Normally I know what I want to do. I want to transition like this, or I want this writing to look like that. How do I do that? And then I'll go and find it on YouTube and copy it. But I guess my biggest education, and that video would probably show it the best, has been making content on TikTok for 2 years and trying to learn that craft of actually holding someone's attention. And I've sort of come to realize lots of different things through doing that, which I put into that video. So that has been really a self-taught journey out of an interest that I can't really explain. I just really enjoy it, and I'm more than happy to sit down at a computer and chop up video and make it tell a story that I can see in my brain. So yeah, I just love it. I just really enjoy it. So I'm probably not as nerdy and as computer savvy as you might think I am. I just struggle through it properly, and yeah.
Well, just like the best of us, but I think I just wanted to make it a point to say that you do a very good job, especially with that video, and good job.
Thank you. recently bought myself a new computer. I did all my YouTube editing on a MacBook Air from like 2012, and it just did like I couldn't make a video longer than 10 minutes because the computer would just lock up. And so I was like really restrained in what I could do on YouTube. So if you look at all those older videos, I was like maxing out this thing. It's nearly on fire while I'm trying to edit sort of stuff, you know. And so recently I bought myself a new computer. I got a copy of Final Cut Pro, and that video that you've seen of me in the Adelaide Rally, that's me finally having some tools that I can use and do things that I've always wanted to do. So I went pretty hard on that. And so I appreciate it. Thank you for your kind words. That was a bit of a labor of love, that video.
Well, at this moment, I did want to just open it up to the chat for questions for Tim. So if you had a question that you're thinking about, or if you want to start thinking about one, why don't you do that? And we'll try to get those answered as we go on. But Tim, you talked about, it's the technology upgrade, kind of, different levels, different devils, as some people like to say. But as you kind of incrementally keep dancing along and getting a little bit better each day, each year, each week, whatever it is at YouTube. What would be one of the things you would say, kind of, if you were looking at lessons learned, or somebody who was about to start a YouTube channel, what would be some of the advice you would give them as you look back on your current YouTube journey?
I don't feel qualified really to talk about the YouTube side of things because I don't think I've actually done it very well. I certainly don't feel like I've put enough time and effort into it. And I kind of made the decision. I was putting a lot of time and effort into videos. You guys know what it's like making a YouTube video with not much return. And then as soon as I clicked onto TikTok and started making content there, I started getting more returns, which meant that I started making more videos. I actually learned a whole lot more about the TikTok side of things. And I personally think that those lessons that I've been learning on TikTok, if you then bring them back over to YouTube, then the videos would be successful. That's kind of my feeling. I haven't proved that. I made that big long video and 500 people watched it. And it's just like, it kind of hurt a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. It would have been nice to that video do a little bit better with the amount of time and effort. But yeah, I guess lessons that I've learned is making videos is a skill. You can't just jump in and do it. You can't just go grab a camera and take the world's best photo, or grab a paintbrush and go paint the Mona Lisa your first try. It's a skill and it needs to be learned. And there is actually things that you need to understand to make good content. And what you need to understand is you're trying to retain someone's attention. And that is a lot harder to do than most of us give it credit for. So, it's a skill that needs to be learned, and it's a skill that needs to be practiced. And yeah, I'm more than happy to talk a lot about that. I actually have a lot to say, and I'm passionate about it. And, having friends like 802 Garage, him and I talk about this stuff basically daily, and nut things out and how we can do things differently. And I guess that's a part of the videos that I enjoy.
Well, and as Grant and I have always said, ever since we've been doing the CarrGuy and SixFan show and talking about YouTube growth, is that there are exceptions to every rule. Yes, being skilled and being knowledgeable and knowing how to grab that attention and knowing how to retain the attention, knowing how to edit and tricks and this and that, that's all great. And you can make some really good videos that way. But one thing that I've always encouraged people to do is, if you're ever considering starting a YouTube channel, pick up the camera, get out and do it, because you just never know when you might stumble upon and trip over a viral video that might bring some attention to you, and build from that too. Now, Grant's been doing it longer than I have. I've been doing it for 4 years, and I still haven't hit that viral video. But I've been exploring things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram and Twitter, and I've been trying to, I don't want to say master any one of them, but become more familiar with them and keep using them. And that's one of the things that Grant and I had talked about earlier this year, was to make ourselves better at the social media game. And I think that, you found your success on TikTok, and you kind of honed that skill. And I think once you find out where you're good at, start that, grow that. And once you get to the point where you're comfortable with it, then you can kind of move on. And I think that you've done just that. You've got great success on your TikTok, and I'm just pulling it up here right now. 137,000 followers and 2.3 million likes. So that's nothing
pretty crazy when you say it out loud.
It is, yeah. It's nothing to sneeze at, right? And I find that just like anything, you'll get out of it what you put into it. So if you're focused and you're willing to grow it, then you'll have success. One of the things that we always do before we kind of get into the questions from everybody in the chat is we want to kind of go around the horn a little bit and talk about some of the things that might be coming up on each other's channel. So Tim, why don't you go first and tell us something that you're focused on your channel that people can expect to see in the future?
One of my main goals for my green A86 is I hill climb race in the Barossa Valley, where Grant's visited once before. There's a hill climb track out there called the Colin Grove Hill Climb. It's actually a very old racetrack. It's one of the oldest racetracks in Australia. And the guy who holds the record for my category did it in a Corolla with a Beams engine. So as far as I'm concerned, we're on level playing fields. I've just got to be a better driver. So I've got a rather large list of how I'm planning to modify my vehicle to achieve a chance at beating that track record. So that's something I'm starting to nut out at the moment. I've sort of got it all worked out and all the steps that I'm going to take. And that will probably be a couple of videos or maybe one just really comprehensive video of how I plan to modify the vehicle to get me to that end goal. So that's something that I've been wanting to do for quite a long time, and we're just slowly starting to get the ball rolling at the moment. I also have my 3 nephews and their good friend Nathan that come to my workshop, and we've just started bringing that back, that we do that every week. And they've actually helped me build this drift car from the first day that we've got it. So they're all around that sort of 15, 16 age bracket. And so you'll definitely be seeing the boys at the workshop working on the car. And as I'm sort of teaching them things, we're also making videos. So last night we did automotive electrical 101. We made ourselves a little circuit and turned a light on with a relay and a switch. And, you know, that video is now up on TikTok if you're interested in how a relay and a switch need to be wired up. So, yeah, those are the sorts of 2 things that will be happening over on the second stage. And then Apex Jaeger, it's kind of sort of going to blur over a little bit. A lot of the 8.6 content will also be part of Apex Jaeger. And over there, we're also going to be doing a full rally build of an A86, my mate's A86, back for the Adelaide Rally at the end of this year. So it's going to be getting lots of really cool stuff happening on that car. We've also got a couple of Mark III Supras and a Turbo MR2. So if you like Toyotas and you like motorsport, second stage and Apex Jaeger, that's the sorts of things that will be sort of happening over the next year.
So, Jason, what's coming up on Old Car Guy? Of course, he's muted because he does that once a episode.
Dang it. I was doing so good here in season 7. Oh, again, the professionalism is just oozing from our pores tonight. So as you guys know, I've been teasing a couple of things over the last couple of days and the last week. One of them is the big engine swap on the Yugo. That is something that we're going to try and nail down here in the coming weeks. Things have been busy at work, surprisingly, which is great because over the last 2 years, things have been really crappy business-wise, so that we are starting to see some more customers come around. But the big thing that I've been teasing about is there's some big news coming to Old Car Guy, and I'm not telling you what that is tonight, and you'll have to stay tuned for the teasers because I'll be teasing it right up until Friday next week when the big news is revealed. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. Grant, tell us a little bit about Straight SixFan and what we can expect in the near future.
Well, I was actually working on the Rat Rod Radio flyer today, and that's what if you were watching this last week, the live stream last week, I would have told you that's what the next episode's going to be about. But to Tim's point, when it really is, it's a game of trying to keep the audience's attention. I really just don't feel good about the content or the footage I have because it's been chopped up over so many days. And Sunday, which is my normal day for working in the garage, I'm again going to have not as much time as I normally do because I may actually be going to look at my next project car on Sunday. So we shall see. I don't know if it's probably more likely going to be Rat Rod Radio Flyer content, but I mean, I'm really going to have to condense it down and I don't know. It's just, I cannot, it just doesn't feel like my best work. So we may skip straight to the project car if I do buy it.
Well, and you know you've got a buddy just kind of pushing you forward on that one. So I've been scrolling through the chat here to see if there's any questions, and maybe Grant, you can help me find some. But in the meantime, Tim, I want to know, you're talking about this whole hill climb thing, and like you're building a purpose-built car to do this hill climb. Is this, pardon me for being a little bit naive to what hill climbing is. I guess I know a little bit about it as far as like Pikes Peak here in the US. But when you build a car specific to a certain run, is that something that it's just a setup to change to a different track or a different climb? Is it as easy as a setup?
So the setup for Mike, so the track that I'm building for is about a 35-second run, is very hilly and very bumpy. So I don't want a low car with stiff suspension because I'll literally slide off the track. And if you slide off that track, there's big rocks and grass and stuff everywhere. So it's more of a tarmac rally setup for the car rather than a prepared track surface. So I've got a couple of racetracks here in Adelaide that I could take the vehicle to. The suspension that I've chosen to put in that car means that it's not that great at the racetrack because it's too soft, it's too high. But you put me on a bumpy road, which is every single Adelaide Hills road, or the Colin Grove Hill climb, all of a sudden I can keep my foot flat because the suspension's now working quite well. So it's a different idea between a prepared track race car and more like a tarmac rally car. So my goal is to be quick up at that hill climb. But then after that little goal's been achieved, hopefully, I would like to then go on and do the Adelaide Rally, which is what my mate does in his car. So the setup's fairly similar. So suspension-wise, I'm a lot higher, I'm a lot softer. But then gearing, I'm not interested. And if anyone ever wanted to do 250 kilometers an hour in an A86, I'd go to the doctor and get your head checked because there's no way I want to ever go that fast in one of those cars. So I can actually set my gearing up to basically top out at like 200k an hour. Because really up that hill, I definitely won't do it up the hill climb. And even in the Adelaide Hills, there's nowhere that you're going to be clicking past 200Ks. Whereas at the racetrack, the straight down the front is literally 1 kilometer long. So, you have enough time to really wind a car out. So it's the gearing, it's the suspension that makes a hill climb car different to a track car.
Well, Tim, as we start to close things out and wind it down, I thought maybe it might be a little bit of fun for the viewers. Here in the States, we had a domestically made beer that tried to pose as Australian Fosters, and their big marketing campaign was how to speak Australian.
Right.
So I just thought I thought maybe it'd be fun if we threw a couple of words your way. I don't know if you want to translate them into. Do you want me to give you the Australian word and try to explain to people what it is, or do you want me to give you the? Okay. All
Let's
right.
do that.
So explain to our viewers what a whippersnip is.
A whippersnipper?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to cut the edge of your lawn and get that nice crisp line, you get yourself a whippersnipper.
So we would call that a weed eater here in the States. I don't know. Jason does. What does Canada?
Yeah, but does your weed eater work on grass is the real question.
Well, see, in Canada, we can kind of go both directions on that one. Whippersnipper is what I grew up calling them. So maybe that's an English thing. But weed whacker.
It's a metric thing. That's what they are in metric.
Yeah, weed whacker was another one, so pretty crude.
Yeah, weed whacker. We say that one every now and then too. So if the viewers have been paying attention really, really close through it, they might notice that we have alphabet problems here in the States. So H and Z, explain to people what H and Z might
You don't say H. What do you call them? Z.
An H.
Yeah. Z
And
and
H.
H. Yeah, we.
I was just different, I guess. Yeah, H and Z.
So again, in Canada, we are of the Zeds. Everything is Broken Garage. Ryan is in the chat tonight, and he's from Newfoundland. So Newfoundland is one of these odd half-hour time zone things off in the distance, and they've got their very own kind of dialect, and they're very similar. They do the H in a lot of what they say too, and I think it's just because of their proximity across the pond to England. They're just that much closer, I guess. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, like Australia was sort of colonized by England, and they created the language. So really, it's the correct way of saying it, is the way I understand.
I would agree. I'd be inclined to say that. I've got one for you. So we were talking about cars, and earlier we all know that the English and the Australians call the front of the car underneath the hood where the engine is. We call it the hood. You guys call it
It's a bonnet.
Bonnet. And in the rear, we call it a trunk, and you guys call it
It's a boot.
Boot. So
yeah.
One of the things that I always found, I don't really find that weird, but one thing I do find weird is what you guys call your fenders.
Yeah.
Like we call them fenders, but you guys call them,
it's a guard.
Guards, right? Like, or mud guards or guards. So like one of the things that we all have in common is our passion for cars. And just because we call things differently doesn't ruin or doesn't negate our passion, right? So one of the things that you said earlier in the chat was a blower under the bonnet, and I thought that sounds so much cooler than blower under the hood, right? Like
above the bonnet.
Above the bonnet, maybe. I think is what he said. Blower above the bonnet.
I laughed too because I was like, that's got to be on a T-shirt somewhere, right? Like blower above the bonnet,
Yeah.
Right, we could do it. We could do a collab T-shirt.
I like it. Well, so I don't have too many. I got maybe 3 left. You walk into a business, and here in the United States, I'm usually greeted by "How are you today?" or "How is it?" So what would a proprietor down under say when you walk in?
I mean, what you want me to say? G'day? Is that what you're aiming for?
That's exactly
how
what
you
he's getting
going?
at.
How you going is where I was going with that one.
How you going? Yeah, how you going, mate? Yeah.
How you going?
How you going?
I'm not going anywhere. I don't.
Yeah.
My foot.
Like,
I don't know. I don't know how I'm going.
It's not how are you going. It's how you going. It's kind of like how you going. It's like just almost one word, really.
Explain to our viewers what a Bundy and Coke would be.
A Bundy and Coke?
Yeah, that's it. This was good. All right. So
Tim doesn't even know, see?
No? What's this one?
Bundaberg, the rum. Isn't that kind of the nickname?
Oh, so you don't know what a Bundy and Coke is?
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Right. Yeah.
Sorry. Bundaberg is a rum, and lots of people like to add it with Coke or cola. So yeah, like a Bundy and rum's rum and cola.
Okay.
Sorry, I assumed you guys had Bundy. Maybe not.
No, in fact, I loved it. It's a rum that has it. For me, it had a kind of a butterscotch taste to it, which is a lot more interesting than a lot of the rums we get around here. But
and most people call it fighting juice. That's normally what happens when you're on the Bundy and rums.
Usually, I get that.
Well, the only other thing that I can think of, and maybe this is where we end it, instead of saying goodbye, I think it's more appropriate to say cheers.
Cheers. See you later.
So with that, I'll hand it over to Jason and let him kind of take it from here, and I think that's where we'll start to wrap up.
Yeah, so Tim, I really appreciate you taking time out of your Friday morning and being a part of the CarrGuy and SixFan show to join us here on Thursday night. And all the input, we appreciate the accent, we appreciate the knowledge, we appreciate everything that you're doing to help support the car community on YouTube. So I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks heaps, guys. Appreciate coming on and having a chat. And I'll talk about cars until the cows come home. So if you ever need a slot filled, I'll jump in there and talk to you about everything. I love it. So yeah, thanks everyone in the chat coming in and keeping that lively. And thanks again. Just thanks for having me.
And to that, we want to thank everybody that's been in the chat tonight. And we did have a couple of super chats in there, I think. So don't forget, we will remember those super chats at the end of the season. If it weren't for you guys watching, we certainly wouldn't be doing what we're doing here on the CarrGuy and SixFan show. So thank you guys for tuning in and sharing out and giving the thumbs up, super chats, all that good stuff. We are back on my channel next week for the CarrGuy and SixFan show with another guest. So make sure you tune in for that. Which should put us back in regular rotation, I think, for the rest of the season. So, guys, thank you so much. Stay tuned next week, back on my channel, and we'll make sure that we have so much more fun with more guests all season long, entertaining you guys, because that's what we like to do. Stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. See you later, mate.